Welcome, everybody, to the first in what we are calling our NITEWorks series of webinars from the Nighttime Economy, Culture, and Policy Alliance, which we call NITECAP. My name is Ben Van Houten. I am the president of the board of NITECAP. We are a nonprofit organization, a network of professionals responsible for nighttime economy advocacy, planning, and management in United States cities. Our goals are to share experiences, policies, and practices, raise awareness about nighttime economy and culture across disciplines, and highlight the value and importance of this role for governments. While this organization was founded by nighttime economy managers out of this growing movement, we are also our members are also other government professionals and nighttime economy advocates as well. And this webinar series is part of an effort to continue to provide resources and tools for all of those different folks working in and around the universe of nighttime economy management. In terms of this first webinar in the series, I think a little bit of framing that cities around the U.S. and around the world are increasingly launching nighttime economy management offices and strategies and programs. Obviously, each one has its unique origin, its own purpose, staffing, and organizational structure. But what does it mean to set up an office? How does one set up an office for success? What are the challenges that come with offices and working in this unique and emerging field? How do nighttime economy managers and nighttime economy management teams work with other government stakeholders as well? And how can that lead to collaborative success? And how can that also lead to friction? Our two speakers today, Sarah Hannah Spurlock and Allison Harnden, are both members of the executive leadership of the NITECAP board. They both have experience in nighttime economy management and have both written policy papers and blog posts for NITECAP available on our website at nite-cap.org about how nighttime economy management offices get started, how night managers work, and really exploring those topics. If you're interested in more information about our organization, about all of the work that we do, and that growing list of resources, policy papers, blog posts, our newsletter, which regularly tracks trends in this space, would encourage you to visit the website, and would also encourage you to become a member of NITECAP to support this work and connect more deeply to this space. So with that, I think I will turn it over to our two speakers to hear more about After Dark, the dual path to triumph and turmoil in urban nighttime governance. Thank you, Sarah and Allison. Please take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Ben and Allison. It's great to be here. As Ben mentioned, I am Sarah Hannah Spurlock. I was the nighttime economy manager in Fort Lauderdale. I have now started my own mediation practice called Sage Mediation and Consulting.
And I'm Allison Harnden. I am currently the nighttime economy manager for the city of Pittsburgh. Prior to that, I worked for the Responsible Hospitality Institute, and as such, worked with cities all over the United States, helping them assess their nighttime economy and come up with nighttime economy plans and implementations.
So the reason that we wanted to start with this topic today is we felt like in the past, there's been lots of education and in-person conversations about how to start a nighttime economy program, or what are some ways to implement nighttime initiatives into your community. So we feel like there's been a lot of that already. So we wanted to start today a little bit on the edge, just talking about kind of the pitfalls that can happen and the challenges with building a strong support base with your organization, making sure that your program is successful, because there's lots of ways that it can be not successful. So we really wanted to talk today about reality. So we're gonna go from there. So Allison, if you want to kick us off.
Sure. Well, I think we're talking about some of the papers that are on the NITECAP website, and Sarah wrote a really fantastic paper that really looked at how you can successfully get started. You had a 3-step guidance for governments to initiate a nighttime economy plan. I think it'd be really helpful if you could walk people through those 3 steps.
Yeah, sure. So this I wrote this paper a couple of years ago. Again, it's on our website, nite-cap.org, under thought leadership menu item. Yeah, so basic 3 steps to building an effective nighttime planning initiative in your organization. The first is you need to define nightlife, and that can look like a number of different things. A lot of folks automatically think of nightlife as your clubs, your bars, your restaurants, your late night revelry. But nightlife is also other things. People work at night. Hospitals are open at night. Schools are open at night. Manufacturing, their 3rd shift. Hospitals have their 3rd shift. So there's a lot that goes on after 5 p.m. in the afternoon, especially in urban cities. So taking a look when you're wanting to build some sort of initiative in your organization, what is it that you want your nightlife to be? What issues are you hoping to address? And you can look at that by defining your goals. So what's the low-hanging fruit? What are the issues that have been brought to your attention that you feel need to be addressed? You might ask yourself, have you identified a problem or an issue related to the city's nightlife that requires a resolution or focused attention? This might be in Arlington, Virginia, for example. They had an increase in alcohol-related crime. So they made a focus of delving into that particular issue. And once you've cured one issue, or cured, you know what I mean? Once you've managed successfully one issue, then it gives you that leverage to keep going. Define the circumstances that led to the desire to take formal action. Did a council member or commission member say something on the dais? Has there been a particular crime spree? Are businesses coming out and saying, hey, we want to be able to do this, and the city, the county isn't letting us do it? In Seattle, for example, back in the day, they had their teen dance ordinance, which prohibited anyone under 21 from getting together to dance. So all the businesses got together and they organized and they made their case, and that ordinance was dropped. So things like that. Step 2 is to identify the support to advance these goals. So who brought it to the forefront? Who brought that issue or problem or challenge to the forefront? Because that's your primary support base. Describe and quantify the support that you're getting from elected officials and city leadership for a nighttime focus plan. Are they on board with this? Even if it's just 1 or 2 of them, even if it's, it could be the whole group, but make sure you identify that support and continue that conversation with them. Describe and quantify the support that you get from the community stakeholders. So elected officials come and go. You're not in office forever. So it's good to have a stable support base in the community as well. So identify that group, those groups, those people, and make sure you've got their support and advocacy and that they're your champions for this cause. Step 3 is to explore different nighttime management options. So now that you've identified what your nightlife is, you've identified the issues you want to address, you've identified and gained support from your champions. Now you need to explore what that management's going to look like. What is implementation of these solutions going to look like? In Iowa City, for example, it's a downtown organization it's not part of the city, but they've decided to create an office that deals with nighttime initiatives. Sometimes that office may lie in the city administrator's office, or the mayor's office. And that tends to be where you'll have the most authority, most leverage, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's where it's going to be most successful. It's going to be most successful where you have the support and the resources, whether that's in your planning department, your police department, the mayor's office, the city manager's office. Your support is where your support is and where you're going to get resources and where you're going to best be able to implement your policies. There's also a possibility you're not going to need a nighttime economy office per se. You may just need to move around, shift some resources. Perhaps in Arlington, Virginia, for example, where I talked about earlier, they don't have a nighttime economy office, but they have a very strong nighttime initiative that partners with the businesses in their entertainment areas. So an initiative doesn't have to be a designated nighttime economy office. It can just be some sort of resource allocation devoted to spending time on your nighttime and making sure that the proper planning and governance are in place.
I always really liked that you let people know that it's okay to not have a nighttime economy manager or an office of nighttime economy. A city really has to do what's right for them, and they'll know what's right for them if they take it through those 3 steps. So I really, there's been this big trend to have night managers. I don't want to discredit our profession, but it's just not for every city. But every city can have a night plan, a night initiative, and your paper really helps people get through that, I think.
Thank you. Yeah. So, Allison, that kind of lends to what our other part of the focus of this program, of today's webinar, is going to be. So we're talking about how you might build an office, but that office can't do it alone. So you kind of point out in your paper about how night managers need to collaborate with other government departments. They can't operate in a vacuum. They can't operate by themselves. So how critical is that interdepartmental collaboration?
Oh, well, I mean, it's crucial. It's, I think it's sort of one of the myths is that, nighttime economy managers just work with nightlife businesses and that's it, but if you're going to meet the needs of those businesses and the nighttime economy and solve some of the issues identified in your plan and create some policies that support the nighttime economy, you really have to have, you're going to have other departments involved in that. I always say, I think a lot of our, what happens in nighttime economy elicits a reaction, it's just reactive. And without a plan, that's all you're going to do is react. So I always say reaction is not a strategy. And to get beyond that reactive point, you need to get in front of it and to dig down into beyond the symptoms into the root causes. And that means, if you apply that night lens to every department in your city, you're going to be surprised at some of the gaps that exist. Another thing that I think is helpful, and will point out how crucial it is to look at all your codes in your city. Think of everything that you have to do in nighttime economy, where it's like, curb delivery, valet parking, liquor laws, open containers, BYOB, amusement tax. Look at every single department. There's something in there that has to do with nighttime economy, and likely is not fitting the current situation on the ground. Some of the legislation and codes written in Pittsburgh, it's a very old city, hundreds of years old. So it's like there's things that are wording that's very outdated, processes that don't exist anymore. So it's really kind of removing some of that fat. But that also, doing that, and also I think another way that I always would enter a city and work with a city is look at what it takes to open a hospitality business. Go through that process yourself in the city. I would actually go undercover and act like I'm opening a restaurant or a bar and see what each department tells me, what they're not telling me, and that can really improve customer service. And you can bring that to that department. Like, here's how I think we can improve the situation, the process that this business has to go through, and in the end, work together on that. So it is just really crucial. The nighttime economy landscape is fast moving, trends come and go. Government's kind of slow, so we have to have somebody who's really got their finger on that pulse. And I think that lends the nighttime economy management position is kind of a hub and a spoke that every nighttime economy business has to deal with. So we can be that conduit and that liaison to get those things done.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point, that we are the liaison, we are the conduit, but we can't do it by ourselves. So we can lead an effort, we can coordinate an effort, but how are night managers working interdepartmentally?
Well, in writing this paper, it was really, it kind of warmed my heart to see like the breadth of all the ways that people are working with not just the departments, but beyond that too. So there's, from being kind of eyes and ears in the night realm, we may go, I know we go out more at night than other departments do, and we can bring that information back to a department. They may not have somebody to go out there, and they just need somebody to have eyes on something, fulfill that role. I think there's a couple of ways that COVID spurred some commonality in different cities. Obviously, with the outdoor dining, bringing that into the parking lane, it required some fast movement. It was meant to be sort of temporary for a while. Then, what does it take to get that up and running? What does it take to bring in the alcohol aspect of it? That's a state aspect. I was involved in all of that process, and the department that's responsible for that recognized that it sounded very technical and engineering, and asked our office to put kind of like a business friendly edit on their guidance for that. We offered then to host an information session and record that then went on their website so that people would know exactly what they needed to do. And then when it came time to make that legislation permanent, we rallied the support of different business districts, and they came in and spoke to council and supported that measure. That's just one way, but I think there's another. That was one thing that came through COVID. Another thing I think is the safety trainings that many of us are doing now that involve, I think at the top of the list usually is de-escalation. And maybe mental health first aid is becoming much more popular too, not just for the industry, but how do we deal with people that come into our businesses in a respectful and in a way that can also get them resources. We're looking at, we're working with curb usage, all the different delivery options that have come out. A lot of cities are dealing with musician loading zones, so they're working with those departments on that. There's just a myriad ways that we're all working with different departments, and it's actually really exciting to see. And I hope that it will open the eyes of, and it's a short paper if people want to look at it on NITECAP, that opens the eyes at all the ways that departments should be, thinking about, if you don't have a nighttime economy manager, how are we dealing with some of these night issues?
Yeah, for sure.
And so, that's a misconception that night managers just work with night businesses, but there are a lot of common misperceptions also about what you have brought up about nighttime economy programs that may lead to sort of a lack of that internal support within city government. Did you find that in your research or your experience?
Yeah, for sure. We've been talking about the misconception that, the Office of Nightlife will somehow handle every single nightlife issue you might have in your city. So a city might create or develop a nighttime economy office and then say, okay, we've checked that box. Now we're done Thank you very much. Allison, Sarah, please take care of all of our problems. You know, I know that one city, I read newspaper articles that they said, oh, great, we hired a nighttime economy manager. Now our city's nightlife is going to be fabulous. I mean, talk about pressure for one person. You know, the idea is that this office will lead or help coordinate. You know, this is what they do. So they know what the issues are. They know what initiatives and best practices are being done in other communities. So they can help coordinate that effort within their own organization. But there must be an understanding with the organization that this office can't do it by themselves. We don't ask our public works department to solve crime. So you know, you don't just run your water system during the day. You also do it at night. So work with our department let's see what we need to do to make water service provision just as great at night as it is during the day. And you know, maybe that's not the best example, but you kind of see where I'm going. I feel like there's unaligned expectations. They expect, I know in my experience, I was hired to field those 2 a.m. noise complaint calls. Well, you know, the nighttime economy office isn't only meant to be the hammer, you know, to enforce and make sure everybody's complying with the law. Because very often that's the only time these nighttime businesses hear from the government is to tell them that they're doing something wrong.
Right.
And our office is to say, no, we want to help you be successful, because you being successful provides a very important amenity for our communities. And if you're successful, the community is successful. So let's partner with you so that you can be successful and so that the quality of life can be protected for our residents and citizens and everybody that lives there. So I feel like, you know, once you can get past those, whether you call them misconceptions or just unrealized expectations, you know, I think that education goes a long way on exactly what it is that you're trying to accomplish with this. For sure.
Yeah, well, beyond those unrealistic expectations and misconceptions, there's also, you still can get resistance, and people can be very skeptical about what this, you know, what is this doing in city government? You know, how does that impact the implementation of a nighttime economy plan?
Yeah, there's a lot of impacts with that. I mean, there tends to be a lack of funding and resources. So if you don't have that support of city leadership and administrators, those nighttime policies you want to implement are unlikely to receive those resources. You know, our elected officials control the budgets, and if they're not convinced of what it is of the value of what it is you're trying to do, they're not going to allocate sufficient funds. Policy stagnation. You talked about going through the code and looking at outdated policies that affect our nighttime. Well, resistance can lead to a delay in that policy development. Skeptical leaders are going to push back against any proposals that you have, and they're going to want more information and more studies and, you know, anything to kind of stall that progress. Ineffective communication, coordination. Successful implementation of these policies require coordination across the departments, which is what we talked about. And the leadership to control the purse strings may not prioritize that coordination. So any efforts that you have to have this interdepartmental coordination are going to be put on the back burner, because if they're not a priority for the leadership, they're not going to be a priority for the public, for the departments rather. Yeah. Same thing with stifling innovation. You're just, if this leadership doesn't see the value in what you're doing, they're not going to put the right mechanisms in place to make you successful. And it's unfortunately that happens a lot in our field. You know, we hear stories about cities creating nighttime economy posts, but not so much about the stories where they got rid of them. They
That's
either
true.
replaced the nighttime economy manager, or they cut the program. I mean, that's what happened in Fort Lauderdale. They cut the program. So it can sometimes be climbing an uphill battle.
Yeah.
I mixed my metaphors there. Sorry.
Well, it's also sometimes climbing an uphill battle trying to work interdepartmentally. And, it's not, most of the time, it's not like we don't want to work with you. What I found in writing the paper and talking to different night managers, and including my own situation, is that a lot of people just are still unaware that the city has an office of nighttime economy. For a long time, it was just me, like you said, I was that one person. But so, that means you got a lot of fancy footwork to try and what's the best way to get the most people to know that you exist, and not only that, it's sort of, I always say, like, nighttime economy and maybe even nighttime economy managers, like the elephant and the blind men, where like one grabs the tail and says it's like a stick, another grabs the trunk and thinks it's something else. So, I think helping departments understand where you meet and where you connect is really part of our job, is educating. I always say that part of my job is orienting the city to a city that operates at night. So that means that's part of my being a missionary and spreading the word about how people can bring the night lens into their department and their job. Nighttime economy is sort of a new concept, so that we're still in that phase. So that's just what it takes. I think there's also some of the challenges in collaborating with departments is where the position is placed. And I think a lot of people have learned from earlier night management offices about maybe how it might be more optimum for their city to place it in a certain area or a certain level. Cities are kind of hierarchical. You have coordinators, managers, supervisors, directors, chiefs, and some of those have access to each other more readily. And if it's too low, I think it sometimes requires like kind of asking permission to be part of the party. But I'm just kind of pushy, and I just invite myself to the party and say, hey, here's how I can help you, and here's how you can help me. So
yeah, and I think that's what we have to do for sure. So was there any are there any collaborations that you've seen that maybe kind of surprised you?
Well, I guess none of them really surprised me once I sat with it. It's like, oh yeah, we should be doing that. Our night manager in Seattle had a situation where the utility company was going to cut power to an entertainment venue just as a band was taking the stage, like at 11 o'clock, because they were trying to give service to a donut shop that opened at 5. And so it's like this kind of, we're bringing sort of an equity to problem solving. Whose problem is more important, or is there compromise in there somewhere? I think some of the, I maybe not surprising, but certainly really exciting are the collaborations to write legislation or to introduce legislation or bring it to the table. Really exciting work being done in San Francisco and Austin and in Philadelphia, in my state, go Raheem. And then some of the broader issues, like I've been asked to bring the night lens to a few things that I'm like, oh, thank you, they get it, to our regional transit authority. Bringing the night workers and the night patrons, issues to the table. Not heard very often. Also, we're starting a strategic plan comprehensive plan for the city, and we're being asked to bring the night lens to that. I've been asked to be on committees for automated vehicles, not just vehicles, but delivery options, drones, and all. Like, what's the future, and what does that look like for nightlife? And then our visitor bureau also did, a series of, what do you call them? Sessions, to create a new strategy, and we brought the night lens to that too. So it's nice and exciting, not surprising. I think we should be doing it, but those are just some of the things that I discovered in writing that paper.
Well, that makes me think of a couple of examples in Fort Lauderdale where the nighttime office wasn't brought into the conversation until there was a little bit of chaos. And then they're like, well, maybe we should have. One of them is rideshare, having designated drop-off points downtown. So our transportation department put together a whole program on, drop-off spots in Los Olas Boulevard in downtown Fort Lauderdale. But most people do rideshare at night, not during the day. And it was working all right during the day because there wasn't a whole lot of activity. But when the night rolled around, they found that there was no enforcement. So it wasn't just because there was a designated zone did not mean these rideshare drivers were using it. So, that it was like, okay, well, this is happening mostly at night. We're having the problem mostly at night. Maybe we should bring in the nighttime office to see what kind of solutions we can come up with. Another example was one of our primary entertainment districts in the city is historic. It's a historic neighborhood. And as such, the infrastructure is aging. And aging infrastructure, we also found, is very shallow. So the pipes, the waste doesn't go down very far, and then it starts to come back up, and so it's smelly. It's smelly in this downtown area, and for years, decades probably, the operators were being blamed for that. You guys need to do better at cleaning up after yourselves, picking up the streets, the litter, which is true. Quit urinating against the walls and the alleys. Okay, yeah, we get it. Some of that happens, but that same behavior wasn't resulting in the same outcomes in other areas of town. So, it was a big, hard push. But, we convinced, or definitely in the process of convincing the city, that there needs to be some infrastructure changes in that part of town that can keep up with the nighttime activity. So, sometimes it takes, that branch breaking before people can see the light.
Yeah. Well, you're also you have been talking about mediator roles, and I'm noticing a lot more since COVID, a lot more need for mediation, and we have been called in to kind of broker some discussions between residents and businesses. But you're you recently transitioned into that type of work, from serving local government as a nighttime economy manager to running your own I almost said mediation practice. Similar, really. What are there any strategies that you see that could be employed, mediation strategies to apply to nighttime economy?
Yeah, definitely. And it was, that may seem like an abrupt change in career paths, but I have found it really isn't. And a lot of the work that I do is still working with local governments to try to use mediation and third-party facilitation to resolve some of their disputes. New York City has their MEND program, which they use a mediation agency department in New York City that actually works with residents and businesses to mediate their disputes over noise or whatever the nuisance abatement is. Mediation brings two parties together in a facilitated, structured process to allow each party equal footing. This third party neutral, they don't have a dog in the fight. So it levels the playing field. It mitigates any power imbalances, which hospitality industry often feels. They're the redheaded stepchildren when it comes to the economy. And I find that mediators can level that playing field so that they no longer feel that way. And it gives them an opportunity to be heard whenever there is any dispute or any controversy. If there's some initiatives that need some help because there's a lot of pushback, mediation might be the way to handle it. You know, come into the conversation and give us your perspective on your interests and your goals, and let the others and hear what the other side has to say in the same vein. And I'll bet you we can come up with solutions that work for everybody. So it's not winners and losers. I'm right, you're wrong. It's, hey, let's resolve this dispute together. And that organic development of solutions really creates that natural accountability. You know, the buy-in. I helped create the solution, therefore I'm going to comply with the actions that we all decided on. So it's, I feel like there's lots of opportunities. It's still kind of an mostly theoretical at this point, honestly, but I feel like there's lots of opportunities, and I've really been excited about delving into that. And that's why I still like to stay involved with NITECAP.
Well, I see it as being really crucial, because for some reason I feel like maybe it's just, I don't know, society has devolved to a point where people are afraid to talk to each other and afraid to work things out. But to me, going through that type of process, or like going through counseling, you know, once you've got some of the tools and you know how to do it, then you can start solving problems on your own without having to go to a mediator. And it's like, so we're kind of teaching a man to fish rather than giving him a fish, right?
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I think sometimes at work, cities, we're getting kind of a little bit too much, you know, not putting it back on the people that need to help work out their problems.
Right. They want the government to fix everything.
Yeah.
But you know, the government can only do so much. So
Right.
yeah, so it looks like we're almost approaching the time we were going to do Q&A, but I just want to ask you one last question about this interdepartmental thing. Are there some ways that you can recommend that cities can kind of set the stage for interdepartmental work?
Well, I think it starts with the job description. You know, I mean, if your nighttime economy plan means creating an office or a person to do this work, make that part of the job description. And then also when you're deciding if you're going to have this office or this person, positioning it at a level that will give them some authority to get things done, or have some sort of authority leveraged to them, you know, through the mayor's office or whatever. Like you said, placing this in the mayor's office isn't for every city, and you know, you can get some things done, maybe not some others. So there's all sorts of ways that people are positioning these jobs. So it just has to be what's right for your city. But I also think that almost like the mediation modeling how to problem solve, going through some sort of nighttime economy assessment to get to a point of like understanding what your city has in terms of nighttime economy, what some of the issues are, some of what, like, you know, Responsible Hospitality Institute does, like hospitality zone assessments or something like that. That process involves multiple stakeholders from different government agencies. And so it'll help them understand nighttime economy, the role of the nighttime economy manager, and also they'll be able to see more how they can plug in and be a willing partner rather than, you know, a mandated partner. So yeah, I think that's just some of that. Well, and since we're on the same lines of that, this might be the opposite of that, but are there indicators? Well, maybe it's both. Are there indicators that may indicate that a city may or may not be ready to adopt a nighttime economy program? Did you find that in your paper at all?
I definitely think so. You know, the easy thing, or what may seem like the easy thing to do, is let's just create the program and
then
it'll
figure
itself. It'll figure itself out. And that is not the way to do it. You really need to have some ideas on the table. These are things that we are going to address. And, you know, maybe that takes like up 12 months of your of your time. These are the issues that have been brought to our attention. These are the issues that have been expressed as a concern. And these are the things that we're going to tackle in our first at least 1 year on the job. And then as you win favor because you successfully manage those, then you're going to build that momentum and that leverage. But you got to have some momentum to start with. And you've got to have champions. You know, in Fort Lauderdale, the city managers, we did an RHI assessment, and they determined we should have a nighttime economy office. And the city manager created a nighttime economy office, but then the city manager was fired, and we got a whole new elected body. So it was a whole new round of players that had no idea what nighttime economy was supposed to be doing. So yeah, you've got to have that solid base, that solid foundation before you actually decide to create this office. That's why shifting resources at first might be the better way to go. Shift some resources, get some stuff done ahead of time with the staff you already have. And then they're like, yeah, this nighttime thing, that's really fabulous. Then create your office.
And that excellent. Thank you both for that. This is a really great conversation, and we have a bunch of really good questions that have come in. And please keep bringing questions in, and we'll see what we can have time for. And one question also from the chat was to share those papers. So I'll be posting those links while Sarah and Allison answer some of these questions we've received. A couple of questions around thinking about framing a nighttime strategy and avoiding resourcing problems or helping to direct resources appropriately. Question around economic impact studies. Would you agree that economic impact studies, once you define nightlife, are important to avoid the resourcing problems you were talking about? I know in my work in San Francisco, an economic impact study, it catalyzed the creation of the position to begin with. I know that not every city has done an economic impact study, but a number of them have at some juncture of the process. Any reactions to economic impact studies as a tool to help support some of this work?
Well, I think they are really, really helpful. And the problem is sometimes, how do you get the support for the economic impact study to prove the value in nighttime economy when you haven't got that yet?
Yeah, so, what comes first, the chicken or the egg?
Right. So that's always the hard part. I wish there was like some benevolent group out there that just would like, for all of US cities, we're going to give you this grant for economic impact studies. I'm putting that out there.
Yeah, well, San Francisco, Ben, where you are, you had a department in-house that could actually conduct that study. So that was incredible. And it was a very well, I don't want to dismiss it. I'm not being dismissive when I say this. I'm actually being encouraging when I say this. It was a very simple analysis that you looked at. You looked at a few different factors. We actually in Fort Lauderdale used that template to do our own nighttime study. And I spent the 5 years I was there trying to get the funding to do that nighttime economy study, which I did and which we did, but then they cut my office and I think it's still sitting on a shelf somewhere. So, but yeah, that provides the data for a couple of things. And I talk about this in my paper. It not only says, okay, this is what your nightlife is actually worth, which is incredibly enlightening in and of itself. But then it also provides that base upon which to measure improvement. So yeah, those economic studies are really helpful and enlightening.
Another question in a similar vein about thinking strategically for cross-department collaboration. Would you say cities adding a strategic initiative for a nighttime lens in all their work to a city's strategic long-term goals would be helpful for cross-department collaboration? This would be similar to how cities have green or carbon emissions goals. Are there any cities you are aware of that incorporated this into their goals and not just founding a nighttime management office?
Yes, I think that that's the dream, right? I for some reason, I thought maybe Minneapolis is doing that. Did you guys, does that ring a bell at all? No? But I mean, how fabulous would that be? Especially, but
Yeah.
you know, that's what the economic impact can say. Oh my God, look at how, you know, important this economy is to our region. We should put the night lens on everything. So there's sort of this, you need some base to get to some of the things that you need to do. Maybe there's other paths
Yeah.
there, but yeah.
And you know, something that I tried really hard to do but was not successful. But you know, our council, our commission does a long-term strategic plan every year, you know, with a work plan and updating their long-term goals. And I kept saying, just say, you know, we want to improve transportation options, and then little parentheses, including at night. You know, just 3 simple words just to tag on to every single one of
Oh, I
their
like
goals.
that.
I mean, and that would have been huge. Just do that.
Mhm.
You know, you don't even need to have a whole separate goal with objectives and a plan just about the nighttime. Just incorporate it into the goals you already have. I mean, that would be a huge step in my mind.
If anything, having a separate statement of nighttime specific values could risk it being, you know, cabineted off in its own.
Compartmentalized. Yep.
Mhm.
Whereas I think one of the insights that I've taken from your conversation is the way that, you know, nighttime is already a part of every aspect of city government and city life, and that
You just need to acknowledge it.
that's I think the way to surface that. Yeah. Another question in here around setting up for success. What do you consider to be some of the best metrics of success for a nighttime economy office? The context for this is annual reports of ways to measure the great impacts the office can play for each city. Thoughts on metrics and how to use metrics even at the outset to define and really position a nighttime work for success.
Yeah, that one's tough. I mean, this is a hard, well, like anything, it's hard to measure. But cities typically have their dashboards, performance dashboards anyway, you know, that they measure different things. And sometimes those are meaningful measurements. A lot of times they're not, but you know, they're measurements nonetheless. And I think, you know, we start with that too. If noise complaints are a huge issue, you know, implement an education about the noise ordinance, look at the noise ordinance, and then measure how many noise complaints you get. Or if businesses closing is a huge issue, maybe you put in a couple initiatives to stop that, maybe with grants that you're giving the businesses. You know, I know Iowa City did a grant for bathrooms, and Austin had a grant for some historic buildings, and then measure, you know, what kind of effect that had on closing. So, you know, I just think you kind of got to think about, again, identifying what your problem is or what issue it is you're trying to tackle, and then figure out the measurements, just as you would with any city goal.
Yeah, and I know we all struggle, especially the cities that are older, or that have had night managers earlier, and maybe are in it less. You know, more recent cities have, you know, a budget, staff, you know, bigger staff than, you know, what we started with, which was one. You don't have enough bandwidth to do all that too. So it's important to somehow show your progress. So I just say measure what you have the bandwidth to measure. You know, for us, that was how many businesses are we reaching with our newsletter that informs them of grants, or how many community meetings are we going to where we're putting our resources out there so they know that they can work with us to solve problems with businesses. You know, you measure what you can measure and keep adding to it. But I love some of the beautiful annual reports that come out, and I'm jealous that I haven't had the luxury to do that yet.
Okay, two more questions here. One is around this interdepartmental work, that once you've done that undercover research about codes, what needs to what needs to change in codes. How do you bring those opportunities for process improvement or efficiency to departments? And what's the reception like when you engage more directly with those folks about the opportunities for reform?
Yeah, I think, what you have to do is really prioritize it first. Is the lack of, is the non-contemporary version of this code causing harm? Is it, kind of prioritize them that way. But one thing I have found, there's more work than can be done. I mean, even if I had 5 staff people, there's so much work to be done in nighttime economy that you have to always also be juggling. It's like I don't know, like a dog race or something. You're just waiting for a certain avenue to open. You have what you're going to do poised, and when the opportunity comes up, go for it. I mean, sometimes it is, this is really important and we need to make it happen, and I'm going to try and, I think everybody in these roles are kind of diplomats. We're friendly people. We know how to communicate with people. We can introduce it in a soft way. I think always the first step is like, how can I help you, make your job better? That opens the door. It's like Sarah said, when you have a win like that, then you have the leg up to do something. But I think it's, you just be poised to do it whenever, like a new council person comes in and now they have this priority for this thing, and you're like, yes, I'm ready, and here you go. We have this all.
We have to be very opportunistic. We have to be
Yes.
very opportunistic in this role, for sure.
Yeah, I would also just add that, certainly engaging with other departments and folks who've been doing work for a long time. I think it's, fair to assume that some people might feel, well, this is the way we've done this and it's worked out pretty well. But there are going to be also other people. I think you might be surprised, people saying, oh yeah, this hasn't made sense. This has been the way we've been required to, but this hasn't made sense for a while. And so it's really great that you're bringing this to the table and bringing some energy, some outside energy and perspective that can help move the needle on things that we've wanted to change internally for some time.
Yeah.
We've got one more question here, which is a good one and a big one. I'm an urban planner in my city. I'm gonna not say the city name, but I'm very passionate about bringing a nighttime management office to my city. I'm not a government worker. How do I approach the city to create this position? Is there a template or guide available? I guess first I would say,
Read the paper.
Read the paper, but also that this is the work of NITECAP, is to help people from inside city, outside city, equip themselves with tools, resources, strategies to think about this work and to help advance these conversations. But I know we only have a couple minutes left, but what are some, for folks watching this now or watching this later, any thoughts on the best ways to approach the city or other external stakeholders, maybe I'll tease out there as well, to help build momentum around nighttime management?
I think there needs to be some. What'd you say, Allison?
I'm pitching it to you. It's your paper.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, getting yourself organized. I mean, hopefully it's not just you that feels this way, but get support from your colleagues and your peers and say, that these things are going on, and this is how the success they've had in other communities implementing a nighttime economy office. So let's get ourselves organized, and then hold a meeting with your district commissioner or council member or the mayor or whoever, or the city manager, whoever they toss the ball to. But yeah, get yourself organized. And if enough people are on board with this, you'll have a stronger leverage to move it forward.
Yeah, and I would say there's, being in this role, we learn different ways to talk to different people. Talking to police is one thing, talking to an urban planner is something different, public works, a business, a nightlife business. And, we can help. I think NITECAP can help you translate that to other stakeholders that could then create that momentum and that leadership and championing that you need to get before you go to that, whoever that person is. So let us help you, I would say.
Great. on that note, we've hit the top of the hour. I want to thank Sarah and Allison for the great conversation. Truly appreciate all the insights there. Please do read their papers if you have not. I want to thank everybody for joining the session and for all the thoughtful questions. Really, just great to see the engagement on this. Again, please visit the NITECAP website for more information about our work and about how to connect with the organization to continue to advance nighttime economy management. And thank you all for joining. And this is the first in the NightWorks series. There will be more to come. So stay tuned and hope to see you again there. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.